I believe that the secret to enjoying life comes from doing as many foolish things as possible.
Lupin III, an iconic, yet somewhat obscure anime that shifted anime discourse and has led the way for a lot of later hits like Cowboy Bebop or Space Dandy. It's a show that's even managed to sneak its influence into modern media, like most notably Persona 5 or a random Kanye lyric. It's not exactly an anime that's considered mainstream or popular, but it's been around for a long while and has spawned many influences since its original 1971 run. When you ask a lot of people about the 70s and how they remember, a lot of them will tell you about the bell bottoms and the afros, or whatever the hell Nixon was doing. The 70s also featured a surge of the manga and the televised anime scene, and the rise of a bunch of fresh ideas from a lot of upcoming artists. A lot of anime from this time were rough, choppy, and sometimes just straight up not even good due to how recent of a thing anime was considered at the time. And this doesn't necessarily exclude Lupin either. Lupin III is an anime from 1971, and as a result is extremely choppy in some areas. Despite this, it managed to spawn a series that has somehow refused to die, has managed to stand the test of time for the span of over 50 years. A lot of animes don't reach this feat with consistent entries for such a long time period. The way the series has managed to cling on and adapt to constantly changing culture is something that's always fascinated me, so I thought, hey, why not make a YouTube essay about it? I began watching the Lupin series around, say, summer of 2019, and it immediately impressed me. For a low-budget 70s show, it exuded charm and was a genuinely well-animated Sakuga flick. So I looked into the series and did a load of research, and hey, here I am today, making a goddamn YouTube essay about it. Over the past 3 years, I've been making my way through the series' 50-year history, and I found it to essentially be a vast rabbit hole. With the series being such a long-running franchise that's existed before the era of the internet being able to document everything, there's expectedly a lot of obscure tidbits in media that in some cases haven't even seen the light of day. If you know anything about the Lupin III series, even if you're a bystander, you're probably aware that there's a shit ton of series and movies, like, way too many. Having so many movies and specials is probably extremely intimidating for most new fans, so I'll try to give some sort of clarity and relief and cut the series up into chunks for the sake of this video. And first off, everything in the series is episodic, meaning each season, episode, and movie are self-contained, meaning you can start wherever the hell you want. Every season, or part as they're officially referred to, are color-coded and distinguished by the jacket Lupin wears, those being green for part 1, red for 2, pink for 3, and blue for 4 and 5. The series is varied in length, but are generally around 24 to 26 episodes each, with the exception being 2 and 3, those parts respectively running for 155 and 50 episodes each. And shifting focus to the movie side of the series, when you eventually get into it, you'll probably start wondering, hey, which of these movies are actually good? And I don't blame you, because this series has some of the most god-awful wasted space specials I've ever seen. The movies that I personally enjoy are generally considered favorable by the fans are The Mystery Mamo, The Castle of Cagliostro, and The Fuma Conspiracy. The Castle of Cagliostro was directed by Hayao Miyazaki, who later went on to found Studio Ghibli. The Castle of Cagliostro is arguably the most popular piece of Lupin media and is generally overall considered one of the best pieces of Japanese work ever. For the high-tier animation to the phenomenal soundtrack by Yuji Ono, everything is great about the movie, even the charm that exudes. And while it's not my personal favorite, a lot of fans enjoy it due to the nature of the film being essentially the precursor to a Studio Ghibli movie and inhibiting all the traits of one. Phenomenal story, backgrounds, music, etc. A lot of fans also consider it the best introduction for this series due to the wonderful direction of it and the characterization of the cast, which I honestly can't argue with. So if you want to try the series, go ahead and give it a spin, see if you might like it. And even Cagliostro aside, there's a lot of Lupin flicks that are generally super good as well, including the ones that I previously mentioned. And if I'm being honest, there's way too many that I personally enjoy and are overall generally considered favorable by fans to completely go over in one video. So I'll just show some on screen and list them in the description. And lastly, I want to specifically call out the recent side trilogy directed by Takeshi Koike that takes a darker, grittier, and more bloody spin on the Lupin series. This trilogy of movies are more in line tone-wise with average crime flicks and are interesting looking to the philosophy of the character given a different direction. It is more so inspired by the original manga, so if you're into that type of thing, give it a try. For the parts, each of them have their own directors giving them their own tone, feel, and general direction for the cast and how they interact with one another. Part 1 is on the goofier side with a lot of Looney Tune physics and the occasional darker tone. Part 2 features a variety of adventures with occasional Miyazaki animation, and Part 3 pushes the animation, physics, and absurdity of the series to the absolute limit. It features some classic 80s funk. Fast forward a couple of 30 years and you end up with Part 4 and 5, soft reboots made 30 years after the last full-on Lupin series. Parts 4 and 5 try and take a spin on the character and consider how a thief from the 70s would adapt to the modern technological age and the challenges he'd face alongside it. Makes a very strong mark and proves that Lupin is a character that manages to stay relevant no matter the era, given strong enough character and writing. So basically, you have an entire series with questionable consistency between, well, everything. Art style, direction, plot, everything. It's a jumbled, cluttered mess. But that's what makes it unique. Every special part is a fun experience because you get to experience a new iteration of Lupin constantly with a new twist, and it's fun. Don't like this Lupin? Move on to the next and give it a spin. That's part of the charm, it gives off a fresh vibe with every watch. Take a concept like Tom and Jerry, a cartoon from the 40s. The synopsis is simple, cat versus mouse. It's a basic concept that the average person would figure is way too broad to keep interesting or to keep running for multiple years. However, that broad concept is exactly what makes a cartoon like that still remembered and even enjoyed today. Taking a concept that broad and simple and finding the most creative ways to execute it. It's way easier to keep a simple, easy to understand plot memorable than an entire arc with consistent twists and turns. Tom and Jerry doesn't need to constantly introduce new characters, plots, or whatever to stay relevant even if it does. People stay because they enjoy the timeless characters in the cat and mouse prompt. You can introduce Willy Wonka to the Tom and Jerry series, and I won't give a shit at all because all I care about is seeing funny antics with the mouse brutally exploding a blue cat. The reason why I bring up Tom and Jerry is because the Lupin series applies to almost everything that I just said. Monkey Punch himself describes Zenigata, Lupin's rival's entire concept to that of a human Tom and Jerry, with Lupin acting as the mouse in this scenario. Lupin III isn't something that you watch for a complex plot or character development or some overarching story. Lupin III is a fun, mindless adventure because of the simple prompt of a thief that steals anything and everything, having to run from an iron-willed cop across the globe. No matter how many extra characters or plot details you add, at heart Lupin III is a silly goose chase, and that's what makes it a fun watch that keeps people coming back for more. No matter how many different storylines or directors you add, you know it's going to be the same lovable formula. You don't necessarily need new characters or to reboot a series to introduce it to newer, younger audiences, as long as you have a fun, memorable character and a story that's simple, but works well. A lot of cartoon reboots do a miserable job at capturing their predecessor's charm due to trying too hard to relate to whatever is currently trending, or whatever they think kids enjoy nowadays. Culture constantly changes, and with that comes adapting to said culture at an attempt to draw in attention from a younger, more in-touch audience. This behavior isn't exclusive to reboots either. Tons of cartoons in general fall ill to this notion. It's something that can easily drag down the enjoyment or quality of said show. Lupin III Part 5 is the 5th installment of the main Lupin III series, and initially aired in Japan on April 4th, 2018. Lasting 24 episodes, Part 5 focuses around the nature of ever-advancing technology and pits Lupin struggling to confront an enemy he's never faced the likes of before, that being social media. Part 5 takes advantage of the oversharing nature of social media and manipulates it in such a unique way to create an entire villain and arc that revolves around said nature, displays Lupin's struggle with such a concept. A thief known for being uncatchable and impossible to find suddenly finds himself unable to disguise himself or even enjoy a damn dinner in peace. One of the themes with more recent Lupin media, especially with Part 5, is that he's, well, old. A lot of long-running cartoons or mascots tend to either dodge or entirely ignore the question of age when it comes to characters unless for a quick gag or reference. A good example of being something like Scooby-Doo, which generally instead either ignores it or tries to adapt the characters to fit the times. Instead, Lupin III entirely wholeheartedly embraces this and makes it part of his character. Lupin twisted into creating a key point of his struggle and directly builds onto his main obstacle and conflict during Part 5, which is goddamn genius. Lupin is a thief from the 70s and struggles to do his job in a new world where suddenly his every move is easily televised to tens of thousands with a small, rectangular device. Climax of this eventually leads up to Lupin retaliating and taking advantage of the technology himself to win, ultimately going from struggling to even comprehend it and adapt to the new age of tech, to taking full advantage of it and fighting fire with fire. This entire story perfectly encapsulates the freshness of the Lupin series and how it manages to stand the test of time, with or without shifting itself to adjust to the modern day. Acknowledging your age instead of trying to hide it, making a story around it clashing against a new world and showing how the character would adjust to it instead of shoehorning whatever's trending for the sole purpose of attempting to lure a younger audience without even understanding said trends. Lupin III is a series that is a classic and isn't afraid to show it, and personally, in my opinion, that's why I think Lupin III stands the test of time.